When when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind-A-Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind-A-Raw for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the post-wrestling site. It's Rewind-A-Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the mic.
Monday night, it is Rewind-A-Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting. Hello, Wai. How are you holding up?
I'm doing okay, John. Yeah, not bad. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm doing well since we last spoke earlier this afternoon for several hours, and here we are back for another night. More wrestling every night.
Every hour,
schedule.
Every day. I mean, there are a lot of free hours in the day without professional wrestling that I think, several of these companies can really capitalize on. Really a missed opportunity, airing wrestling at 4:30 p.m. on a Monday afternoon, maybe 9:55 a.m. on a Thursday morning. There's no wrestling
a lot of untapped hours that they are missing out on, that they are leaving open for these wrestling fans to dare go out and have any semblance of a social life or anything else. I mean, you gotta keep these people locked inside like us.
Oh, the people want it. People are craving it. Yes,
it's Nick Khan's goal. I'd make SmackDown 7 hours, make Raw daily programming. Why not?
How long would a review be if SmackDown was 7 hours? How long would it take to review a 7-hour wrestling program? I mean, I guess we reviewed 5 hours this afternoon, so I guess it's not that different.
Could you imagine watching a 7-hour slog of a SmackDown? Like, at what hour are you tapping out? Like, I'm only watching 3.5 hours of SmackDown this week. I'm not watching for
You're
7.
not a real.
You think I'm crazy?
What are you? You're not a real fan. You only watch 3.5 hours.
I remember when Fight Pass started, and now it was like the very first card. It was in Singapore, so it's at some ridiculous hour. It became this thing about you're not a real fan if you're not watching it live. I was like, sorry, here's my badge. I guess I'm out of the club. I'm sorry.
You're
a real fan.
Too real for
live.
me. Yeah,
too real. Well, tonight, everyone, we are going to be going through Raw from Savannah, Georgia, and a lot of the news was contained to Forbidden Door, so I'm going to defer people to our review from Forbidden Door earlier today. We went about 2 hours with our live experience of Forbidden Door, notes from the Forbidden Pour that went down in conjunction, and all the news coming out of the press conference, the injury to Bryan Danielson, and other news and notes as well. The all-out series of shows that Chicago is going to be hit with, 3 shows that particular week, Labor Day week. So all of that can be found at postwrestling.com and here on the YouTube channel. My brain
took you a second to remember the name of our website.
Where do I work again? What's the show Forbidden Door? It's the review. It's up. People seem to enjoy it. So go check out all of that. Wait, for someone that didn't see Forbidden Door review in 10 words or less, how would you describe Forbidden Door?
Lots of good wrestling. It might be your favorite show.
If you don't have time for 2 hours, that's all you need to know. Okay, That's it. Go watch Ospreay and Omega Part 2.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This coming week, let's talk a little bit about some shows on the site. Tuesday night, Braden and Davie, the two men who never sleep, they will be back at 10:15 Eastern after Gold Rush, as they will talk about Carmelo Hayes. Well, what 48-hour period is this man going to enjoy as he takes on Baron Corbin tomorrow night? I mean, just a star-making performance tonight on Raw. We'll see how that's followed up. They will be discussing all NXT-related news and notes, and they also have their own review of Forbidden Door up. And they are off to Hamilton this Wednesday because they're real fans, not like us. I'm dapping. I'm not going out to Hamilton this week. Sorry.
I mean, they're not that much younger than we are. I don't think, but it seems like they have unlimited energy. These guys, I saw it with my own eyes. The pre-event, they were like the life of the party. They went to the show and screamed their heads off. Then they come back and just scream their heads off some more through renditions of Judas, Cher. For some reason, that's how they like to end their karaoke nights, by singing Cher's "Believe."
That's
And
like
now they're
Joey singing Angel at the end. I mean, you can't end a concert without the signature song.
it is their signature song, yeah. And now this weekend or this Wednesday they're going to Hamilton. So, by the way, a quick plug for those guys. Go to the Poison Rana feed if you want to hear their account of the Forbidden Port as well as Forbidden Door. They recorded a quick show this afternoon as well.
Yes, which I just mentioned 2 minutes ago, but Way's not even listening
sorry.
to me at this point. Do check it out. Both of us endorse this review from Braden and Davie. I'm going to be hanging out with them this week. We're going to Demand Lucha later this week.
All right.
Thursday
Cool.
night. El Hijo del Vikingo will be in town.
Sounds awesome, man.
Also this week on Wednesday, it's our doubleheader night. We will have Rewind-A-Dynamite with the live show in Hamilton taking place. That we will be watching from home. So we will have a review of Dynamite followed by the double shot for members at the Post Wrestling Cafe, chatting about the Junkyard Dog episode of Dark Side of the Ring that airs this coming week. And all throughout this season of Dark Side of the Ring, we will be going live for Cafe members on Wednesday nights after the Dynamite review. So 4 shows per week on the Cafe over the next month. And that continues Thursday with the continuation of Secret Invasion. And this will be W.H. Park and Rich Fan, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I'm not sure if they have a guest or not, but you will at least be guaranteed to get those two. I'm told episode 2 is really strong. So I'm looking forward to it myself. On
Thursday as well, Brandon Thurston and I are going to be joined by Mike Straw, who is a journalist with Insider Gaming, and he's going to be discussing the release of AEW Fight Forever. This is the big release of this video game that has been talked about, what would you say, years by now? This
since like the beginning, I feel, of AEW. Yeah.
This has been a long-term project for the company. It finally gets released later this Thursday. So we'll talk to Mike about sort of just the importance of this game to AEW and sort of the early reaction that those have on Thursday when this game is released. And Brandon and I will also be going over maybe some of our live notes from the press conference this past week when we were at the Forbidden Door press conference and whatever other news and notes are going on, including week 2 of the Collision number, which is going to be very interesting to see how well week 2 followed the debut of the show as well. So that's Thursday. And then for patrons, Friday night, Way and I are here for Rewind to SmackDown. Saturday, it's a free show after Money in the Bank. And Way and I will be going live at a unique time to be determined after Money in the Bank. So do you want to throw out a set time? Do we want to aim for a certain time?
Well, hard to know how long this show is going to go. What do you anticipate? A 3-hour show?
Roughly, yes.
Okay, so we can roughly say a roughly unique time of 6:05 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, if that changes, we will let you know. But that'll be our tentative
6:05 on a Saturday. Perfect.
Oh, who could that could work out really well. We could get people in and out before Collision, and then sometime this weekend you will have Kate from Montreal and John Cena, the brand new tag team here at Post Wrestling with Collision Course, and a packed week. So postwrestlingcafe.com and video.postwrestling.com. That is how you can support Post Wrestling. $6 a month gets you access to all those 4 bonus shows each and every week, as well as access to all of our archives, Rewind-A-Ways, which go back to the very beginning in 2017, MCU later, and we will have, I believe in the coming days or so, we will have a bonus episode. Is this correct, Way?
I think tomorrow is when we might release a recording of our Q&A from the Forbidden Door. And, this is a very raw recording. It'll feel like you're just right there in attendance. So
this one's for the hardcores.
That's code for saying the audio quality is not the best, but it's listenable, at least to me. So all patrons will get that in the Post Wrestling Cafe feed sometime tomorrow. Also wanted to make a note. WrestleNomics moves over to the WrestleNomics Patreon starting in July. So Brandon, Chris, and Jesse, their awesome show that we've been privileged to have on our feed for the better part of the past year will now be moving over to the WrestleNomics Patreon. But once a month, they will be giving their shows away for free, and that includes next week. So if you want to keep up with WrestleNomics, subscribe to the WrestleNomics feed where you will continue to get that show once a month. But of course, subscribe to WrestleNomics on Patreon to get the show every single week.
Yes, and Pollock and Thurston will continue as a weekly show on both the WrestleNomics and Post Wrestling feeds. So do follow all of the great work at WrestleNomics. Only thing here is a couple ratings notes before we get into Raw. So SmackDown on Friday night did 2,354,000 viewers. It dominated programming on Friday night and a 0.61 in the demo. So this was down from the week prior that was all built around the Jey Uso decision, which was a very big number for them. But anytime SmackDown is topping a 0.6, I would consider it a good number. And this was number one on television by a wide margin. So very good there. They were down 3% in viewers and down from a 0.67 the week before. Fourth week in a row that they've topped a 0.6 in the demo. In Canada, they did their most viewers since May the 5th with 163,300 viewers and up 32% this week in the 25 to 54 demo. Rampage on Friday did 391,000 viewers and a 0.11, down 8% and down from a 0.13 in the demo last week. However, they were 11th for the night on cable, which is more so a sign of where cable numbers were on Friday night. This wasn't a big number for Rampage, but their ranking was among their better or their higher placements of the year. So they were second in their time slot behind On Patrol Live, and we're neck and neck with the PFL card on ESPN that they just edged out in viewers and were almost the same in the demo. Both did a 0.11, but I believe Rampage did slightly more, but very small amount as well. And Collision, while we don't have the US number, at least in Canada, this was the show that aired live on TSN 5 because it aired in Toronto, and they did 79,000 viewers and 40,400 in the 25 to 54 demo. So what does that mean? It was 9th for the night in viewers among sports programs, which included the Jays game and a CFL game, and they were 4th for the night in the demo among sports. So this was well behind Raw, SmackDown, and even quite a bit below Dynamite, but it did beat out NXT. So if you're looking sort of for a placement of where Collision fit among the other programs in Canada, it would have been 4th out of the 5 mainstays on Sportsnet 360 and TSN. I don't believe it's the Hamilton show is listed for broadcast this week on TSN. So unless we get some update, probably will be TSN Plus. But given it's a Canadian show, I guess we'll try and find out for sure, because they do seem to lean towards these Canadian shows sometimes getting, I believe, actually, as strange as it is, I think Rampage is listed on TSN this Friday night, which almost never happens. So, I mean, it's very hard to draw anything from these numbers because, like a Collision, I don't even know how many people were aware of this. Obviously, the midnight airing did nothing the week before, and this number did okay, but it's so irregular, and I guess we're just trying to figure out if Collision is going to have any kind of consistency, and if these numbers do well, is this kind of a trial period for TSN, because they have not appeared to commit to this beyond just these the show in Toronto in terms of airing on the network.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Just try and find it as best you can if you're a Canadian viewer. And Gold Rush on Tuesday night, it will have Carmelo Hayes and Corbin for the NXT title, Tiffany Stratton, Thea Hale for the women's title, Gallus against Idris Enofe and Malik Blade for the NXT tag titles, Nathan Frazier defending the Heritage Cup against Dragon Lee, which could be the big match of the show, and Gigi Dolan against Kiana James. So they are coming off a spectacular number last week. I don't know if this one is going to be able to replicate last week, but certainly I was optimistic about they've got Carmelo Hayes on the show tonight. This is a smart promotion, but was it an effective promotion? Stay tuned for our review. And then Dynamite on Hamilton. We only have 2 matches announced thus far, with Britt Baker against Ruby Soho in the Owen tournament, and the Painmaker, the water bottle hitter, Chris Jericho, teaming with Sammy Guevara against Sting and Darby Allin in a tornado tag in Hamilton. The Painmaker comes to Hamilton.
Yeah. No baseball teams in Hamilton, so that's where Jericho comes in. He was doing a bit of batting practice at the press conference, and maybe he'll be ready.
That is accurate. So that is what is coming up over the next couple of nights. We go over to Raw from the N Market Arena in Savannah, Georgia. They did not have a whole lot announced for this show. Going into this afternoon, they had announced Ronda Rousey and Raquel Rodriguez, and then several segments we had the Women's Summit that we did get. And then we had an update on Seth Rollins' condition, which I guess we technically got. And then Beyond that,
Cody and Dominik at some point when I looked was announced.
that's right.
But
Cody and Dominik were going to have a segment together, which again, all of these did happen, but there was plenty on this show that was just not announced going in. So this felt like a Raw where it was just tune in and you'd find out what you would be getting throughout the night.
As has been consistent with reports over the past week that Vince has been very hands-on with last-minute changes to these shows.
Yes.
As evidenced by Friday, where 3 of the matches announced did not take place.
Yeah. I would love for this guy to be hands-on like a week before. That would be great, wouldn't it?
I think this has really shown, our whole lifetime of, watching wrestling has shown Vince to be really quite the procrastinator. Probably the guy to leave his homework to the very last minute, maybe even past deadline, and just quickly kind of scribbles, his best effort and just hands it in.
Maybe he forgot it was Friday last week. Maybe he just thought it was Thursday and he was like, oh, it's Friday.
Yeah. I just love this. He has people on his staff that are working their asses off trying to keep up with these shows, building long-term storylines. And Vince is just waiting and waiting and waiting till the very last minute to even look at the damn thing. Look at the damn script before he makes his edits and changes. Maybe he works best on a Sunday night or Sunday morning or Monday morning, I should say.
He's probably watching Forbidden Door last night and then said, you know what?
Yeah.
What do we need on this show? We need Finn Balor and Carmelo Hayes. That's what we're going to do. Dominik and Rhea Ripley are in the ring. Heavy boos. They won't allow Dominik to welcome us to Raw. How's this show supposed to start unless someone welcomes us to the show? So Rhea calls Cody a wannabe and a loser. So Cody comes out. We're in Georgia, so thunderous reaction for Cody. And he welcomes us to Monday Night Raw. So now the show can begin. You're welcome to the program.
You need somebody to welcome the show. Yeah.
Rhea has to speak for Dominik. And then Cody quotes the Cat in the Hat. Why? Because Dominik is a child and a scared little boy. And he asks why Dominik is running. And he mentions how he's facing Damian Priest tonight for the first time ever. What a first time ever match. Cody and Damian Priest. Because qualifies. First time ever. And he offers Dominik a free shot on him. So Dominik decides to come back, but then backs off. So Cody says, I want you to show me something on Saturday. Prove that you're half the man of your father. Or if you're just mommy's little boy.
Nice. Yeah. I thought it was a pretty strong segment that made good use of, the Dominik Mysterio reactions. I love that he's starting to use Rhea as sort of his vessel to speak because the audience isn't letting him speak. Cody came out here and cut a pretty good babyface promo and did pretty much all the necessary talking he needed to for this go home segment. This is a good feud for a Cody detour, ahead of the Brock program, which is in itself a detour from the Roman Reigns program. So for a detour of a detour, I think you could do worse than the types of crowd reactions that they've been getting for this Dominik Cody program.
The side roads.
Yes, that's right. It's like getting lost. It's like, missing an exit when you're on your way to Toronto.
How do you miss an exit? Much less
I don't know.
Multiples.
Yeah.
Shinsuke Nakamura against Ricochet. I thought this was a really good match that these two had. And not just Ricochet looking spectacular. I thought Nakamura really hustled in this as well. Bronson Reed is seated ringside, and this leads to Ricochet and Nakamura attacking him on the floor, and then Reed is ejected. So then they just are left alone. There's a standing shooting star by Ricochet and a Cabrata landing on the knees, and Ricochet ducks the Kinshasa, hits the recoil for a 2 count, and then it's Nakamura with a running knee in the corner, and we get this incredible sequence of kicks by Ricochet, including kicking off the back of Nakamura as Patrick's asking us if this is the Matrix. He hits a running sliced bread and then a shooting star off the top and wins in 10 minutes and 44 seconds. I thought this was a really great opening match for Raw.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, these guys have been involved in a feud right now with Bronson Reed that I haven't been exactly, I haven't been completely captivated by, namely because I think it's so strange that they're doing so much with Bronson Reed without him actually being involved in the Money in the Bank match at all. In fact, I feel like it's really taken Ricochet and Nakamura's it's taken their focus away so much from the Money in the Bank that they don't even feel like they're competitors. They don't feel like they have any chance of winning, basically. But I thought tonight was really strong in ring. Ricochet, that sequence at the end where he just did the whole almost like what Ospreay did, last night, bouncing off of his opponent into the great dodges of Nakamura's kicks into the sliced bread was just absolutely awesome. This was the type of match that kind of reminded you that despite, the dude's shortcomings on the mic, despite maybe Nakamura's inability to cut incredible long promos, if you let them wrestle like this every single week, they will get over. They will get an audience, and you don't really need a whole lot else, in my opinion. So
You just let Ricochet go out there and wrestle every week?
I mean, I think you could try that. This was incredibly impressive. It was the type of buzzworthy wrestling that I think will be enough to just get these guys over alone without having to cut lengthy promos or act backstage.
This ladder match is going to be spectacular, the men's one, and Ricochet should have a very prominent role in that match. Like, they've almost guaranteed him and Logan Paul have to do something memorable to top their Royal Rumble spot. And
right.
Someone threw out one of the ideas about like a Ricochet Logan Paul match at SummerSlam. I'm certainly warm to that idea. If you don't have, they've certainly, just the fact they're referencing it, I feel it would be, it's at least viable. But I think the question is always, is Ricochet viewed in that light that he would be of that stature?
Well, no. Yeah, it's kind of weird in that, like, I would love to see that match. I think, if Logan Paul was a guy who did TV matches, it would be a good match for TV. But it's weird. It's in this weird space where Logan Paul is only active on pay-per-views and in certain pay-per-views. And Ricochet is not exactly big enough to justify a singles pay-per-view match against somebody of the stature of a Logan Paul. So that's the type of match that I don't know if we'll ever really get beyond, these sort of interactions in this ladder match.
Matt Riddle issued a challenge to Gunther for the IC title this Saturday at Money in the Bank. And he says his ankle is fine after last week's attack. So Kaiser appears, insulting his skills. So then Riddle attacks him, and Gunther attacks him from behind, accepts the challenge, and stomps the left ankle of Riddle, which is wrapped up. So the ankle couldn't have been fine if he has it wrapped up. I mean, wouldn't that not make it fine? It's a target for Gunther. He knew exactly where to attack him. So he's coming into this match with a bad ankle. Adam Pearce meets with Dominik and Ripley, and Dominik wants a match after being embarrassed by Cody. And Pearce said, well, that's great because Vince tore up multiple segments and we're trying to fill. You just name your match. And Dominik said, I'll get back to you. I'm going to pick someone big and strong. And Pearce is just like, cool, like just name whoever and you can have it. There was no approval process here. Dominik got to pick his lame duck opponent and Pearce just signed off on it. So this was very easy for Dominik to get what he wanted.
I mean, what do you think is the typical sort of checklist, for what Pearce would or would not approve? The guy tends to just, if two random people happen to be in the ring, it's likely that they'll have a match.
Quarter-hour performances, I'm sure he would lean on that. Like, what is the past performances of an Akira Tozawa? We cannot put this out on television.
Okay.
But maybe he thought differently. Then we had a by the numbers video for Money in the Bank. I learned so much about Money in the Bank in this video, courtesy of Jackie Redmond. We had, 78% of the male winners have cashed in. As they have said multiple times, 100% of the women have cashed in, have done it successfully. 3 men have cashed in twice successfully, including The Miz and Edge. And they did not include Phil.
Oh,
yes.
Right.
And then the best stat of the entire video, over 380 ladders have been used to one's advantage. Now, this screams some poor sap was tasked with counting these. And at some point, by Money in the Bank match number 50, he was just like, I'm just writing over 380 because it's in the ballpark. You never say, if you have the exact number, you're not saying over 380.
Yeah. Well, I think the only challenge that would have possibly, called out bullshit on that stat would be John Pollock actually doing the work and trying to somehow come up with the number.
Not even I would go that far.
And yeah, exactly. So even if you weren't able to do it, then I don't think anybody would call them out on this being false.
Yes. I would think this editor would also think who would call me on this? A wrestling fan would. There would be somebody out there that would. And 5 people have cashed in on the same night they won it and won at WrestleMania in reference to Seth Rollins. So these are always fun videos when they do them for the Rumble. So there you have it. Will we reach the 400 ladder mark this Saturday? I would think it's within reach. Pardon the pun.
Well, you have 2 ladder matches, of course. I mean, are we talking about reused ladders throughout a night?
They said over 380 ladders have been used to one's advantage. So this isn't even counting the ladders that have been just used to someone's disadvantage in the match.
Are we recounting ladders? How do we know they're not like, safe-keeping ladders that have already been used once? I don't know.
Does that stat impress you? Like if
sure.
I told you how many pucks were used in this hockey game and I told you 35.
No. How many
what?
Pucks, how many
35 pucks were used throughout this 3-period game? Wow.
How many balls have been used in the history of Major League Baseball?
Millions. You don't say.
I gotta tune into this game.
Wow. Do you know
so many balls?
Do you know how many balls have been used in the history of baseball? Have you ever thought of that for a second?
Wow.
Like we need a stat to really. We need something in the hundreds.
This
come up with something.
All about big numbers, no matter what. However you can get there. So, yeah.
How many ropes were used in the rings for these ladder matches to surround the ring?
That would probably be easier to calculate than the number of ladders.
Probably. Ronda Rousey versus Raquel Rodriguez. So Shayna Baszler and Liv Morgan are in the respective corners, and they have announced the tag title match for Money in the Bank. Guillotine by Rousey, and then Raquel vertical suplexes her way out, and then Rousey uses her Suzuki armbar in the ropes. Then the Piper's Pit gets stopped, and Rousey goes to the ankle lock. Raquel breaks free, and then Raquel blocks an armbar with a slam, and Baszler pulls Rousey out of the way from Raquel's spinning elbow out of the corner. So Liv goes after Baszler, and Rousey does her step-up armbar attempt, but then rolls to a cradle. 2 minutes and 20 seconds, which it's very hard to do a match in 2 minutes. I thought that these two, this was just a sprint for 2 minutes, and they had a very good match on TV months ago. And while this was nothing you're going to really write home about, I thought for the time they had, they did what they could, but this one could have stood to have had a bit more time to it, you would think. But
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I did feel like it was a little bit rushed in that, it just felt
they
like
were very rushed, but
yeah,
it was not sloppy by rushing it either.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of that is because of Ronda's beautiful submission entry technique. That to me is one of the best parts about her professional wrestling game, which she's been able to apply from her judo background. Just they all look great, and it's completely unique to her because not many other people in professional wrestling can pull off that sort of a great looking flying submission. But maybe it was missing a bit more interactivity with the crowd to really feel fleshed out. But given the time, it's hardly something you can blame them for. I felt the booking of this was not that great, for challengers that are about to go for the tag team championships. I understand Ronda Rousey, especially in a singles match capacity, nobody beats her, and I'm fine with that. But I almost feel like this needed a bit more of a screwy finish, or Ronda needed to cheat a little bit more.
Or put Baszler in the match.
Sure, yeah, but just something to give the challengers a little bit of momentum going into this. I mean, I imagine maybe Friday they'll do something else as well, because aren't they SmackDown people? Aren't Raquel and Liv SmackDown wrestlers?
I'll take your word for it.
Didn't Liv come back on SmackDown?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, okay, whatever. Hall pass.
I don't believe in separate talent for these shows. I'm not going to rack my brain over which brand these people are supposed to be exclusive to. There was a really nice video on Rollins and Balor, very much kind of like the NXT style that Balor was doing in his last run, where here he is just on his own, reflecting on the SummerSlam match and stating how with one arm he still beat Rollins, but then 22 hours later was forced to relinquish. And what he holds against Rollins is the fact that as soon as he relinquished the title, out came Rollins laughing, and they had the footage of it as well. Says, "I didn't get bitter, you made me bitter." And he is sick of the people worshiping him, singing his song, and he's going to take from Rollins what he took from Balor, and this time both his arms will be raised after winning. So a very good video package. And overall, I think this has been a very good build for what on paper feels like a routine title defense for Seth Rollins, but I think Balor has certainly upped his game in this 4-week build that they've had for the title program.
They booked him really well, by making him a lot more aggressive. I think the storytelling has been strong too, doing like great callbacks to that initial match these two had, and Rollins at least, trying to pull the old Finn Balor out. I love this video. I thought it, first of all, looked really good. Balor's camera shots looked really good. Production on it overall was strong. And I thought the content of Balor's words, calling back to that incident with Rollins, coming out and laughing at him, was great justification for his recent actions. And
I was like, yeah, F this guy.
Well, totally. Yeah, it's a lot easier to buy into guys' motivations for, being an asshole when you can see video evidence of the past of the other person being an asshole. So it did a good job heating up the feud, and I thought it would do a good job of setting up Rollins' retort to basically him being an asshole in the past. Unfortunately, we'll talk about it in the Rollins segment later. We didn't really get it.
Ha ha. Rollins begins the second hour. The audience is singing, and he notes that Carmelo Hayes is here in the crowd. There's an NXT chant, and he thanks Carmelo for having his back last week on NXT and plugs the match with Baron Corbin for Tuesday, which was all well and good. I thought, cool, they're promoting this match on Raw. And Balor attacks Rollins yet again. He brings up how Balor attacked him on Raw and NXT, but I'm still standing. And he challenges Balor to come finish the job, stating that he won't be 100% at Money in the Bank, but he says, your best version is not as good as my best version. So then Balor attacks him, and they fight ringside, and Rollins is sent into the stairs, ribs first, and then into the desk with the ribs. And as Balor grabs a chair, Hayes pulls it away from the front row, allowing Rollins to send Balor into the timekeeper's area. And Rollins somehow got cut on the face here in the midst of all of this.
Yeah. Physicality was cool. The way they, continue to maybe tie Carmelo Hayes into Seth Rollins, stemming back from NXT, I think is a really great way of introducing Carmelo Hayes. I was disappointed that Rollins didn't more directly address, the heel actions that he very clearly displayed in the Balor video. Why did he come out and laugh at Finn Balor at the time? I mean, yes, the answer is that he was a heel at the time, but I think in the context of story, the good guy needs to take accountability for poor actions of the past that are brought up, or at the very least acknowledge them. And Rollins basically just, didn't even acknowledge that it happened. So I didn't think the two segments between Balor and Rollins felt all that cohesive. And in effect, it kind of hurt Rollins as a babyface.
Well, there would be more to come with Carmelo Hayes on the show. Saxton is with Tommaso Ciampa, who spent 9 months rehabbing from hip surgery. And guess how many times The Miz reached out to him? 0. And people warned Ciampa that Miz was a user, and this injury was a blessing in disguise, left on his own for 275 days to be in his thoughts and figuring out who his friends were, and asked himself, why am I wearing neon green and hanging out with the Miz? So he's going to create his own opportunities, and that was that. Hayes and Balor is announced for later tonight, so this would be Carmelo Hayes' first match on Raw itself. Ciampa and Miz never get started as the Miz jumps Ciampa from behind. And like all major angles that kick off generational feuds and our blood programs, the chant of tiny balls really gets this off to a heated beginning as Ciampa is laying on the ground and the crowd. I think this is what when Ole trapped Dusty in the cage and turned on him. I think they were chanting tiny balls as well.
I think we all remember Mitsuharu Misawa chanting tiny balls at Kawada.
That was the genesis of the program. Yeah. So he then suplexes Ciampa into the barricade and lays him out with a skull-crushing finale, leaves him laying. So Ciampa and Miz continues.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I thought last week was just like, hey, let's tie this loose end with Ciampa and the Miz, and then let's move Ciampa on from the Miz and forget that association ever happened. Because I think part of the danger of spending too much time with the Miz is that you get dragged down to the Miz's level, which is about as kind of bottom rung as you can get at this point. But I liked the intensity of the Miz in this segment. I thought the aggression was really good in the beatdown. And, if this is a serious tone that they're taking, tiny balls chant aside, it could potentially.
He's also wearing a shirt that reads, "My balls are massive, so I cannot take any serious version of the Miz that they are alluding to."
Well, we shall see. But, I guess they're looking for a bit more of a feud for Ciampa before connecting him to Gargano, or maybe Gargano comes in at some point and just helps him.
Imperium is backstage and Zayn and Owens appear. They argue about interruptions and how rude they are. And Owens asks why they are here. And he has to pretend that he cares about the attack on Riddle from earlier tonight. And it leads to Zayn challenging Gunther for a match tonight. So the singles match will happen later. Dominik Mysterio, his opponent is Akira Tozawa. Tozawa gets a bit of offense in, including that tope suicida. And Rhea distracts him on the edge, leads to him getting crotched on the turnbuckle. And Dominik wins with a frog splash in a minute 50.
Yeah. When you have a role like this where like a heel comes out and says, I'm going to have a, great big challenge against somebody. And the guy who comes out is, a joke, obviously. And when you have to play that joke, man, I said the Miz was the bottom rung of this ladder. I mean, you don't really get lower than Akira Tozawa, unfortunately. I would almost say like he's like sort of like the Gilbert of modern day WWE, and it's kind of sad to see for somebody so incredibly talented. He's definitely just in the happy to be here camp.
Post Ninja Akira Tozawa as well. So at least he's making small advancements in his WWE run. He's got tights. He's got gear.
So
the Viking Raiders did a video. They're coming for Alpha Academy. Beware. The Women's Summit for Money in the Bank. Trish, Zoe Stark, Becky Lynch, Bayley, Io Sky, and Zelina Vega are all in the ring to trash talk before Saturday. Bayley notes she's the only one to win this match in the past. I have the best chance to win, and gets a look from Io, and Bayley clarifies, or Io, one of us. Vega then takes her shots at everybody here and is doing this as she pulls out her chancla. You never go to a women's summit without a chancla in your back pocket to have ready in case things get violent. So then Trish calls everyone in the ring little girls, and the crowd is chanting for Becky. Trish is here to save the division. Winning is what I do. And asks Becky if she will be man enough to say, thank you, Trish. And that's it. It's all hands. Everyone goes at it. Becky tosses Trish and Stark out. Sky and Bayley stomp Becky and Vega. Vega comes in with the chancla for the assist. And then Lynch and Sky remain. Sky hits a acai moonsault to the floor. So Becky is alone in the ring. And like you do when you're left alone with a ladder, you climb up, you kiss the briefcase, and you unhook it. So Becky is the visual winner of the Women's Summit.
Yeah, which means she's probably unlikely to win the actual thing. Is that right? Doesn't this jinx you, basically, if you climb the ladder and grab it before the actual match?
Traditionally, that's how things could lead, but maybe that's the swerve of the swerve.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. I thought coming out of this segment, my big takeaway was that Trish's heel voice, it sounds really good. I just remember her when she just kind of started this run a few months ago. And in a very short amount of time, I think the confidence has just grown so much. I would say it's fully returned to maybe, the height of her heel voice back when she had her initial run. Her promo sounds very smooth, and I think her attitude and body language feel very natural as well. So she's done a great job of getting back into heel shape. I think the thing holding this match together is the Becky Trish feud. I don't sense much interest in really any of the other competitors, with the exception of Io Sky. Even though the build has really not been focused on Io at all, she's that type of dark horse, I guess challenger that I think London especially will really lift up the moment they start, teasing her climbing. So I feel like I'm still going with Io as my pick.
Yeah, we'll update and the card at the end of the review here and the latest match announcements. Kathy Kelly interviewed Carmelo Hayes, and worth noting, no Trick Williams by his side on this show, which I thought was a mistake not to have Trick by his side. That's part of the Carmelo Hayes package, and
made him look small, honestly. Even though Trick is a bigger person, I think when you look at Carmelo with a guy as big as Trick, it kind of makes the whole package look bigger and makes the both of them look like a bigger threat to just any average competitor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the Carmelo Hayes character, even since he's turned babyface, he's always maintained his voice, and here is this guy who's got the chip on his shoulder. He's ultra confident. And here in this promo, I was invited here by Seth Rollins, and I aspire to be like him, and I'm going to take care of his problem. This is the furthest thing from what the Carmelo Hayes character would ever say. And I just felt this before the match outcome, it just made him look made him feel like Seth Rollins' little buddy that had shown up on Raw and did not feel like your NXT champion, who is not just this happy to be here babyface that he was introduced to a large audience as on this show. That was my first issue I had with Carmelo Hayes on this.
It almost makes you suspect whether or not different people were writing his promos tonight than.
What are you saying? What are you saying?
Yeah, I don't know.
Becky runs into Rhea Ripley, and Rhea warns her about whether she wins the ladder match, about cashing in, because if you do, it will be the last thing that you ever do. Becky says, when I was champion, I main evented in all of these towns, whereas you are a main event side piece. The title needs me more than I need the title. And Becky says she wants to win the briefcase in order to make Rhea squirm. So probably, planting something for down the road, not necessarily that she has to win the briefcase, but with Rhea, this is certainly a destination. You would think that, it, to me, post Trish program, this could be way down the line, but something that they're at least foreshadowing.
Could be as late as Mania, could be as early as SummerSlam, but, having Becky directly tied to the title chase scene via Money in the Bank, it was great justification to give us this scene so that it at least plants the seed for the audience in the future to want to see this program. But yeah, could be as early as SummerSlam, could be as late as months from now.
What could be bigger than Payback? Big Labor Day weekend show.
You know what? I'm trying to think. Nothing. No.
Gunther against Sami Zayn. Kaiser and Owens are ringside. Owens is on commentary. And then Giovanni Vinci comes out on crutches. And Zayn is off the ropes and gets caught into a released German suplex. They go through a break, and Zayn takes this huge chop on the buckle. And Zayn comes back with strikes and a sunset bomb. He tries for the Blue Thunder Bomb, but it's countered to a rear naked choke. Zayn fights to his feet and hits the Blue Thunder Bomb to escape the choke. Zayn then climbs and leaps off the top and is caught with a chop in midair and then gets dropped with a knee, and Gunther hits a splash. That gets a 2 count, and Kaiser gets on the apron, is attacked by Owens, and Gunther kicks Owens. That leads to a tope con hero by Zayn onto Gunther, and then with Kaiser distracting, Vinci nails Zayn with the crutch, and thus a great metaphor here, a crutch that they used for this finish with the distraction, and leads to a powerbomb by Gunther in 12:22, pinning Sami Zayn.
Mm-hmm. A really good match with, unfortunately, a very predictable finish. And, on a TV show, like, it's not a big deal, but this is exactly the type of conditioning that made the Don Callis moments last night so good. It's because a guy heel comes out, of course he's going to help, the guy win. The match is not going to win until Callis hands in the screwdriver. And when he kicked out from the screwdriver thing, that's what made that moment so big, is because throughout
Gunther nailing guys with screwdrivers would be awesome. That would be just.
But that moment works so well because we see these type of distraction finishes in this match, for decades, almost all the time. So it was a very predictable finish, but of course the in-ring chemistry between these two was fantastic. Gunther's chops felt extra heavy on a guy who, is more on the thinner side, like a Sami Zayn, and it set up this great underdog performance from Sami against perhaps, the best big man in the business right now. So really good match that you hope to see them run back on a bigger platform.
You would think that this should put them in line for at least a tag title shot by pinning the champions. I wouldn't want to beat Zayn or Owens unless there's a purpose to it.
I don't know. With Gunther being IC champion, is that a direction they would even tease?
Well, I would then question booking this match to beat one of your tag champions. I mean, it kind of just makes the tag titles look totally of no consequence if you pin the champion and then have no desire to even go after them.
Well, that's a question I would have for a lot of the, what about the NXT champion?
Well, we clearly have set up the next NXT title challenger in the match to come. Of course.
Sure.
Owens attacks Gunther, and then Kaiser gets stomped. Riddle hobbles his way out, attacking Vinci, and grabs the crutch to fight off everyone, and it ends with a stunner to Kaiser as they clear the ring for the pop. So that is how the baby faces ended. So Riddle was he was fine with the original crutch shot and leading to the finish. But once they continued after the match, then he was like, oh, Christ, I better get out there on my one leg to try and make a save.
And how bad of a friend is Kevin Owens and or Sami Zayn for that matter? I feel like Riddle has been beaten up like week after week.
They left him last week. He got attacked, and
this week as well. I mean, this week, granted, was a bit more of a surprise, but it's hardly like they hardly showed any real remorse, I would say. Yet Riddle, friend that he is, comes out, gives them great movie recommendations. It's really a one-sided friendship.
That's a segment I want, is a guy's like Riddle's getting beaten up, and we cut to the back, and Zayn is talking to Kevin. He's like, should we do a run-in and save? I don't think this time. I don't think so. Yeah. Well, why is that, Kevin? And we actually get the dialogue of the thought process of why we should not do it this time and let him just die.
Right. Yeah, sure.
There was a video on Carmelo Hayes, and then the Alpha Academy is training. Maxine notes how she has destroyed Valhalla each time they've interacted, thanks to the coaching she's receiving. And they're ready whenever the Viking Raiders are. So this is the most long-term story we have ever seen the Viking Raiders and Alpha Academy involved in.
Well, yeah, primarily Maxine versus
Valhalla.
Valhalla, yeah.
Which you hold off. That's a payback match.
Put it in Wembley. Give it to AEW.
Pittsburgh gets that one.
Sure.
Kathy Kelly's with Natalya, who notes how she signed up for this. And Rhea's at the top of the mountain, and the biggest battle is inside of her head. And the fear of not losing is not as great as the fear of giving up. And she's been shaken, but she is still standing and wants to face Rhea again next Monday. And no one can erase what she's done in this company.
So she told Rhea to bring her title. Okay. So now this is, of course, does Rhea have a match on Saturday? Okay. No.
But she did say next week. So you're expecting this to be on Monday as opposed to the pay-per-view.
So was Natalya asking for a championship match here after going on several
No, she said, bring your title. Just, to remind me of that you're the champion to have in the corner. Didn't necessarily say a title match.
Yeah, because I think...
But she doesn't deserve a title match if that's what happens next week. I mean, that'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
Of course it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I mean, the fact that she even thought I thought she was asking for a championship match. And I don't think it's out of the question that they promote next week as a championship match between Rhea Ripley and the person who's been losing every single match in this storyline, in Natalya. So... I don't know, man. I've been waiting for weeks now for this Natalya transformation, whatever she's kind of got in the works, and it's looking like they're going to make us at least wait another week for it. I think there's some promise in hearing her talk about her self-confidence issues. I think that would be interesting, but I don't think this company has ever shown the nuance to be able to pull off that sort of storyline, at least not with the mid card.
Finn Balor, Carmelo Hayes. Hayes hit the fadeaway onto Balor. The actual match itself was they had a good match here. Hayes comes off the middle rope with a flying clothesline and an inside out lariat by Balor. And Hayes leaps off the rope, coming down with a DDT. And then Balor lands this brutal shotgun dropkick that just rocks Hayes into the corner. And he goes down, and Balor climbs up, and he hits the coup de grace. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to beat this guy. And they beat him clean. 9:28. Finn Balor beats him. This was one where I was already thinking ahead that, okay, they're obviously not beating either of these guys given their matches coming up this week. So we're going to get just some random.
You'll get Corbin, or Rollins.
That's what I assumed. Or I'll be like, why did we even book this match when we don't have a finish? Well, I was wrong. They had a finish in mind, and they just beat Carmelo Hayes. And someone's going to argue, look how many people got to see Carmelo Hayes. Yes, look how many people got to see Carmelo Hayes potentially for the first time. And boy, were they just drawn into, man, I got to see this guy tomorrow night, don't I? Against Baron Corbin.
No, I hated this. I hated having the champion of a brand that you're trying to lift up to feel somewhat equal to the other two, losing to a non-champion, to a guy who, Finn Balor, obviously needs the win, but you didn't have to book this match. I think something like this.
Carmelo could have just had a showcase, beat Ziggler, or beat somebody. You could have him showcased on this show.
Give us the non-finish. This would have been one where I would have more than welcomed the non-finish, because I thought the match was so good, and you were able to show Carmelo Hayes was at the level of somebody firmly established on the main roster, like a Finn Balor. Carmelo looked great here. He's got a very fan-friendly style right now with a lot of springboards, unique sort of smooth-looking offense that immediately impresses. But man, the booking firmly establishes NXT beneath the main roster. When you have a guy at the top of the food chain in NXT, be able to just kind of lose pretty unceremoniously, clean to, granted, Finn Balor is kind of up there, but he's not that high up.
And they shouldn't be beating Finn Balor on this show either.
They shouldn't have booked this match, period, or at least with the clean finish. Yeah, I did not like this at all.
Yeah, it was just a callback to times that they did this in the past. I remember with Charlotte and Natalya. This was years ago, and Charlotte was doing a big takeover match. So the Monday they bring her in Charlotte, no less, in North Carolina, and they beat her as the women's champion going into this takeover special.
Well, even just going back to the ECW, WWE interactions and having Taz as the ECW champion lose to Triple H, that was, maybe just a bullshit way of, I think, diminishing, I guess, a competitor, but this was their own product that they've been trying to lift up with all this work. I thought this was so counterproductive.
And it's been very successful this last month. Like NXT is doing very well numbers wise, and is coming off like one of their biggest shows in years last week. And granted, you're not going to replicate that this week, but this was certainly not trying to persuade people otherwise that this was this is the star to watch. Quite frankly, I think the best representation of Carmelo Hayes would have been him and Trick on this show and just cutting an awesome promo together. And you could have him linked with Rollins. Like he's attached to the top guy.
Give us a tag team match if they're such good friends or something, like something where he could look good. I mean, did Nick Khan watch this? Did he approve this? He's been NXT's biggest cheerleader in recent weeks.
Oh yeah. I'm sure he was looking at the 2x decrease that this could result in the, among younger viewers.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, but like booking decisions throughout the show, and principally this one, but a lot of the others, man, really do make me question who is in charge, who's doing this,
who's behind all of these decisions. The question just looms. Kathy Kelly is with Cody Rhodes and Pharaoh.
He was there. The dog was there. Really?
Didn't you see Pharaoh?
I didn't notice. No.
Pharaoh was here. And Cody is tired of talking about Dominik, and he will not have Judgment Day with him this Saturday. Was that made clear? Why wouldn't he have Judgment Day with him this Saturday?
I don't know. I don't think that's a stipulation or anything.
Yeah, like Priest is in the match, but Rhea doesn't have anything. You would think she would be in his corner. Why wouldn't she?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay. He said, we're going to find out what Dominik has on Saturday. And the main event is Cody Rhodes and Damian Priest for the first time ever. Dream match. So the ROH alumni meeting here. Rhodes is fighting from underneath and then hits a gourd buster as Dominik and Rhea come down. And Dominik is hiding behind Rhea on the floor when Cody goes after them, and Cody gets caught by a flatliner. Priest is in control, and then Rhodes lands a power slam, disaster kick, and the bionic elbow that gets a 2 count. Priest stops a crossroads, and Cody then hits the pedigree, but Priest rolls out to the floor. And as Rhea gets onto the apron to distract, Dominik stops a Cody cutter and leads to Cody getting tripped up and hit with the South of Heaven, but he kicks out. Cody avoids the Razor's Edge, runs Priest into Dominik. Cody cutter crossroads in 13:28 as Cody goes into Money in the Bank with the victory. And then Dom gets in one final cheap shot, which has been all the lead up here, is that he gets his... this is being built up like the way they used to, where it would be the heel manager that finally the babyface is going to get his hands on the manager at the Garden, and it's Dominik in the role of the manager on Saturday,
who is so incapable of being actually competitive that they get their upper hand by hiding behind somebody else.
Yeah, although I don't see this being your 5-minute affair. I see them doing a match on Saturday. But yeah, that's how the show ended. And I think Money in the Bank looks like a really great card on paper. But I certainly had my issues with some of the stuff on this show, although there was some good stuff on this as well between Gunther, Zayn, Ricochet, and Nakamura. I like quite a bit as well. And I continue to enjoy the Rollins Balor build. I think they've done a very effective job of that.
I think in ring, this was a really strong edition of Raw. Between Zayn and Gunther, Carmelo versus Balor, I thought was really good. Finish aside, Cody Priest, I thought was good. Nakamura, Ricochet, I even thought Ronda and Raquel was a pretty good quality. And
the fact that for a 2-minute match, I mean, I don't think you could ask for much more of those two in 2 minutes.
And just the sheer fact that I can even name 5 matches on this professional wrestling show, I think already puts it a step of your average edition of Raw.
Raw?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, there was more than 5. No, I'm saying on this particular show on Raw.
There were 6.
The 6 matches, that's it? Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Well, anyway, 5 of them I thought were really good. So the fact that I thought it was good, but man, the booking decisions throughout the show I did not agree with, namely Raquel losing to Ronda and Carmelo losing to Balor. I just, it just didn't, like, I understand you want to have certain people in higher profile matches get the big wins, but man, you should have more people on the roster than just this for them to get wins over. Anyway.
How do you feel about the handling of, like, how protected do you view Owens and Zayn as tag champions and coming out of WrestleMania? Like, here were your headliners on the first night. Like, they're obviously like key parts of these shows, but how would you view them just in terms of sort of that top end mix that are treated as such?
I think in the tag team division, their limit is only so high, where they feel like they can be constant parts of the show. They can be in, throughout segments. They can help people set up other programs. They can have occasional interactions with Jey Uso, but they'll never feel like main characters. And that's sort of been an issue with Balor and Owens ever since WrestleMania. They just kind of feel like guys who are holding on to championships, but as long as they're tag team champion holders, or champions, there's just only so much they can do without Roman Reigns attached to it. So I continue to feel like they are both far more important to the show as single stars, and I keep anticipating them losing the championships. Maybe they'll wait until SummerSlam before that happens.
Yeah, I bring that up because it's been interesting to chart all of these Canadian numbers that in February and March, and it was the build up to Mania, but dude, the Canadian numbers were through the roof. And I give a lot of that to the Zayn push. Like, he was a difference maker here in Canada. And since Mania, those numbers have totally come back down to earth. And I've like doing this week by week. To me, it is very evident that the whole Zayn and Owens program meant a whole lot more in Canada. That's obvious. But since that, like the bloodline angle, it's meant a lot in the US and has not correlated anywhere to that same degree in Canada. Like that 1,000-day Roman Reigns episode, like it was just another number for, like, Dynamite beat that SmackDown in the demo that week. That tells you like where it's at. That in Canada, like obviously Zayn and Owens are going to be, national figures, but like to me, it has felt like what they did have, that lightning in a bottle, has not been followed up on since WrestleMania, even though they're key players, but they're not the difference makers they were pre-Mania.
No. I think part of that is maybe the lack of tension that's been present ever since Owens and Zayn have gotten back together, and you've kind of divorced them from the bloodline. So much of that wonderful tension building that we've seen throughout the Sami Zayn, run and turn, has not been replicated through whatever they're doing.
You're not chasing anything. There's no story that draws you in week by week. It's like every week they're going to have matches, and they're not engaged in any long-term issue, or we're not building towards something where we're trying to see week by week how
they also don't have any genuine threat towards their tag team championships. Who are the challengers for these titles? There's nobody. Who is it? Who are they building up?
Gunther and or Kaiser and Vinci.
Like at some point, it looked like it would have been Judgment Day, but Judgment Day are clearly doing their own thing. I think they're still owed a title shot. I feel. Profits? Like that? They're not doing anything. They just lost on Friday, I believe.
It's obviously the Viking Raiders.
Yeah, of course. Like they're not doing anything to build any tag teams to challenge for Zayn and Owens. So it made for a really nice moment at WrestleMania, but I would take the belts off of them and have both of them go their separate ways as singles.
Here's the lineup for Money in the Bank. 7 matches are now part of the lineup. It is the men's Money in the Bank match has Ricochet, Shinsuke Nakamura, LA Knight, Santos Escobar, Butch, Damian Priest, and Logan Paul. The women's match features Zelina Vega, Becky Lynch, Zoe Stark, Bayley, Io Sky, and Trish Stratus. Cody Rhodes against Dominik Mysterio. Seth Rollins against Finn Balor for the World Heavyweight Championship. Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler against Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez for the tag titles. Gunther against Matt Riddle for the IC title. And what I assume is the main event, the Bloodline Civil War with Reigns and Sikoa against the Usos. I can't imagine anything else closing the show beyond that.
It's possible one of the ladder matches closes, but yeah, it's hard for me to think Roman Reigns doesn't come out last for the main event.
I just can't imagine it. And I think you could have Rollins and Balor as second from the top, so you at least have if you wanted to do one of your Money in the Bank teases, you could. They sometimes like to do that on the night of, but it's a very strong card. I think this is going to be a really good show on Saturday, and
in front of a really hot crowd,
phenomenal crowd that they're going to have in London on back-to-back nights with SmackDown on Friday as well. All right. If you have any super chats, you are welcome to send them in, and we are also going to be going to feedback at forum.postwrestling.com.
Let's go to feedback at forum.postwrestling.com. I'll start us off, John, and then we go to Denise from Georgia, who says the Raw Go Home show was decent, with Gunther's match standing out as a reliable highlight. Although Carmelo Hayes had a spotlight, more could have been done to establish him as a rising star. The upcoming London crowd promises an exciting Money in the Bank. Take care.
Yeah, certainly. We voiced our issues there. All right, Jermaine from Chicago. First, congrats on a successful weekend. Hopefully this is the start of quarterly meet and greets. Raw was an okay show, and basketball is over. So what else is on? I thought Sami and Gunther had a really solid match, minus the finish. Okay, he wants to talk about Nick Khan. Didn't he tell us that it's important to build NXT up? Beating the NXT champion clean on his Raw debut will do the trick. Speaking of trick, I see he will be getting the Tucker treatment soon as Melo gets called up to the main roster. I know that Hunter doesn't stand up to Vince. The way he cared so much about NXT and had pride in it, no way he would have booked that match that way tonight. Do you guys think booking Damian Priest to lose before his big Money in the Bank match was a great idea? I think it's Vince once again scared to use his roster. I didn't have as much of an issue with Damian Priest losing on the go home. I mean, Cody's in a big featured match. And you were in Georgia. I wouldn't have advocated for Rhodes losing either. But
I mean, maybe I'm just kind of overthinking things, but the way they book these sort of things, I actually feel like Priest is a bigger favorite having lost the go home main event than Becky Lynch for going up and grabbing and holding the briefcase. So I think it improved his chances.
Okay. Does this mean that it's guaranteed Carmelo retains the NXT title? Or maybe he loses to Baron Corbin.
I think it's a pretty safe guarantee either way. Let's go to Muggin, who says a strong go-home show. The third hour was stacked with Gunther versus Zayn and Carmelo Hayes versus Finn Balor, the latter of which hit two birds with one stone. It draws more eyeballs on NXT and on Melo as a future call-up. It was a test that he passed with flying colors. Dude is ready. I agree with everything about that except for the way it was booked. Muggin. The video package I thought was outstanding. Like they need this sort of thing. Everything about tonight was a great reintroduction to Carmelo Hayes, except for the finish, arguably the most important thing. He says the last push towards Money in the Bank did its job, and Dominik continues to relish being such a heat magnet and cheap shot in Cody again. Makes me want to see him get his on Saturday.
Okay, and the last one comes from Brian in New Jersey. By the end of the night, Cody and Dominik felt like a major part of the PLE, and I think Rollins and Balor has been a strong feud. Despite my thinking, there's no way Rollins is losing. Even though Gunther and Riddle is official, it seems secondary to the overall feud between Imperium and the Kevin, Sami, Riddle contingent. The Women's Summit seemed like a better idea on paper. On Forbidden Door, Omega versus Ospreay is absolutely a match of the year contender, but I agree that the Tiger Driver 91 wasn't needed. Also, before that, there was a gross moment where Ospreay licked Omega's blood off his bicep, which reminded me of a far grosser moment from 20 years ago with Sexy Eddie. All right. Thank you, Brian.
I don't think I'll be clicking a Sexy Eddie link.
It's a very famous spot when Sexy Eddie went down to CZW, but yes, the squeamish don't have to click on the link, but Brian is there to turn your stomach if you are so inclined on the forum. Thanks, everyone, for your feedback. And again, if you didn't hear us earlier today, you can check out our Forbidden Door review, and a thank you to all of those that made their way out to the Forbidden Pour over the weekend. It was a great time had by all, and it was great to meet so many listeners from many parts of the globe that stopped by. I mean,
I feel like half the people there weren't from Toronto.
When we did the poll and just asked who's from outside, was it outside of Toronto or outside of Canada?
Outside of Toronto, but
outside of Toronto, I mean, dude, it had to be at least half the people. And I talked to people from England, from Scotland, New York. I mean, there were
Nova Scotia,
Detroit,
Brampton,
Minneapolis. I mean, all over the place. So it was great to meet so many listeners. A very fun time. And the audio of the Q&A portion, it will be going up for patrons on Tuesday. And it's we did our best with the audio. It was not the most audio.
No, we enhanced it. Okay, we made it sound even liver than it possibly could have felt in person. So you'll
feel like you're in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Ultra enhanced 15K resolution.
Ooh, 15.
Yeah.
No shortage. Okay. Lots of shows coming up this week. So go to postwrestling.com and postwrestlingcafe.com or video.postwrestlingcafe.com gets you access to all of our shows, including 4 cafe exclusives this week, beginning with the double shot on Wednesday night, as we will be live with Dynamite and then immediately followed by our review of the Junkyard Dog episode of Dark Side of the Ring. So that is it for us. Thanks for tuning in to Rewind-A-Raw.